The 2020 draft class is nearly 3 full seasons into their careers, and some players from this class are already NFL stars. This class is remembered for having 5 first-round picks from the national champion LSU Tigers, and for having 4 quarterbacks selected in the first round, those of course being Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, and Jordan Love. There was also a quarterback taken in the second round in Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. And because Jordan Love hasn't played a whole lot, we will not be redrafting him in today's video as he would go 5th by default. But for the other 4, they have all panned out. And yes, they each have had their down moments, as every NFL player does at some point in time, but we are going to be redrafting the 4 top quarterbacks from this class in reverse order in today's video. With each fanbase understandably passionate about their quarterback and their guy, I'm sure we are going to disagree and you can make a case for each player. It's a video I've been looking forward to for some time now, and without further ado, let's begin. And the 4th quarterback taken from this class in a redraft would be Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Obviously, Dolphins fans have heard it all with Tua, from he stinks to he'll never be worth a first-round pick and everything of this nature, especially with the success of Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert over the past few years. But Tua has had a good 2022 season, and up until a few weeks ago, Tua and the Dolphins were undefeated in games he started and finished, and since, they lost to the 49ers and Chargers, both of which were on the road. They're a good team, and it is due in large part to Tua. Mike McDaniel has played a huge part in his progression and overall development, and there is a reason why he has played so well this year. They all go hand in hand, and so do Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Tua still has to make the plays, don't get me wrong, and there's been games this year where teams look like they want almost nothing to do with the Dolphins because of how damn good they are. To counter the speed, what some teams will do is have their secondary play back so they don't get beat by the top end speed of both Waddle and Hill, and when they do that, a lot of the time the Dolphins will throw the ball underneath for a quick gain of anywhere from 13 to 20 yards, depending on how quickly defenders run them down or how much damage Jalen or Tyreek do after the catch. But the negatives associated with Tua usually aren't major gripes. They are simply that his arm is not as strong as Josh Allen's or Patrick Mahomes, and that because of this, he is a system player, which is technically true regarding the system quarterback, but that's not necessarily a negative thing. And in fact, a lot of players are system players. It is about maximizing what they can do at the NFL level, and the best example of this from a position that's not a quarterback is imagine Marshawn Lynch or Brandon Jacobs or Mike Allstott back in the day in Kyle Shanahan's outside zone offense, where we've seen true speedsters like Raheem Mostert and Matt Breida thrive. It would be similar to Tom Brady running the option with Leonard Fournette in Tampa. So the system quarterback, while intended to be negative to represent Tua's limitations, it's not always a bad thing. However, I do think he would be the 4th quarterback selected if NFL teams were starting a franchise today from this class, due in large part to his limitations relative to Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow. He has 22 touchdowns to 5 interceptions on the season and has been efficient for most of the year, and if these 11 games he's played in were translated to a full 17-game season, he would be on pace for over 4,600 passing yards, 34 passing touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Not bad for a system quarterback. And yes, Week 14 against the Chargers was a terrible outing for him, but every player has bad games from time to time. I don't want to discount his entire body of work for one bad game, even for as ugly as it was at times. He missed a lot of throws in this game, and it was evident early and often. It's important to acknowledge Tua's limitations, but it's also important to note he is a very good quarterback. Unfortunately for him, he was in the same class as 3 other franchise quarterbacks, and we have him going 4th in today's redraft. I do believe the 3rd quarterback taken in this redraft would be Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts. And this is where things can get a little controversial, as I'm sure some Eagles fans, after the success he has had this year, believe he could be in the top 2. But I do think Jalen would be behind both Burrow and Herbert. Jalen is a legitimate MVP candidate, and in 13 games has led the Eagles to a 12-1 record and has 22 passing touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He also has over 680 yards and 10 rushing touchdowns on the ground and is a legitimate dual-threat quarterback. Jalen is a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses, as teams can focus on slowing down the passing game, like the Green Bay Packers did, as they held him to just 153 passing yards, while he completed just 57% of his passes, and Jalen pretty much said, alright, that's fine, because I'm going to run for 157 yards since you took away the passing game. And the next week against Tennessee, he had a passer rating of over 130, threw for 380 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the Eagles won 35-10. The reasoning for Jalen at 3 is, I think, while people acknowledge how good of a season he is having, there's also a big crowd that says, look at the team he has around him, and just imagine if Justin Herbert had this team with this offensive line and a team that could stay healthy. It's not a shot at Jalen as much as it is to say Herbert is an uber-talented player and puts up very good numbers in a situation that is nowhere near as ideal as the current situation Jalen is in. In this redraft a couple of years later, people would look at the first 2 years, and obviously Jalen did not get to play anywhere close to as much as Herbert did in 2020, given he was drafted number 53 overall and was a contingency plan versus Herbert being drafted number 6 overall and being forced to play almost right away. And Jalen went through his own struggles through the first 2 years of his career. Yes, he is balling right now and is one of the best players in the entire league, and I'm sure there's a crowd that will say Jalen could win an MVP and have a number 1 seed, while Justin Herbert hasn't made the playoffs in his career, and maybe he does this year, but that is something we will soon find out. And in 2023, the conversation for Hurts will center around, can he keep this up? This is something we heard all offseason with Joe Burrow and the Bengals, and they certainly have. Going back and looking at draft classes, and especially at the quarterback position, is always fun, and I do think Jalen is more than here to stay, and in a redraft a year from now, who knows where he goes. But for now, I do think he would go number 3 out of these quarterbacks. Number 2 would be Justin Herbert, who has been a stud since the Chargers drafted him with the 6th overall pick a couple of years ago. Herbert won the Rookie of the Year over Vikings receiver Justin Jefferson in 2020, as he finished his rookie season with over 4,500 total yards and 36 total touchdowns. In 2021, he threw for over 5,000 yards at just 23 years old, and is going to be approaching that number for the 2nd consecutive season. There isn't a throw Herbert can't make, and he is the full package. What's unfortunate for him is when people compare numbers from their 3rd season, they're not going to see his fellow draftees throwing to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, or A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, or Jamar T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams have been injured for a good chunk of 2022, and Jamar Chase has for that matter as well, and those two, Keenan and Mike, are Herbert's top 2 targets. They've missed 11 games combined, and Herbert is still 2nd in the NFL in passing yards and 9th in passing touchdowns. And with them both being back, I do expect him to steadily climb the ranks of passing touchdowns, as the difference between him being top 5 versus 9th is 4 total TDs. He will throw for 4,000 yards for the 3rd consecutive season, barring injury, and the only thing you can really bring up about Herbert in a negative light is he has a lifetime losing record. This isn't to say every loss is on Justin Herbert and he has to play better, because it's not, but it is something the Herbert haters routinely bring up. I think the record is more of a reflection on Brandon Staley than Justin Herbert, and I think that's an understatement. Herbert isn't the dual threat Jalen Hurts is, as to be fair, not many quarterbacks are, but if defenses do not keep an eye on Justin, he will make them pay, as at 6'6" and 240 pounds, he can pick up a ton of ground when he chooses to take off. In terms of arm talent, there's not many guys that make the throws Justin does on a consistent basis. I wish both injuries and coaching would go in his favor so we could see him play in the postseason, because we are truly in a special era right now with all of the young quarterbacks. Not just from this class, which isn't a league of its own by the way, but across the AFC, with some being sprinkled in the NFC. Justin has played in 45 career games and has thrown for over 300 yards in 21 of them. He has more 4 passing touchdown games than he has 0 passing touchdown games, and he is the face of the Chargers franchise. Herbert is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and I hope the Chargers maximize what not only he can do, but what the team can do. And Justin comes in today as the number 2 quarterback in the 2020 redraft. And the number 1 quarterback from this class is the same guy who was drafted number 1 out of LSU a few years ago, and it is Joe Burrow. Burrow is one of the best players in the NFL and is going to be the Bengals quarterback for a long time. With Burrow and his receiving core, the Bengals can never be counted out of any game because they can heat up at a moment's notice and turn it on when they need to. Since a 4-interception game back in Week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Joe has thrown 25 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions in the 12 games, and the Bengals are 9-3. With some quarterbacks, you question whether or not they can step up in the big game, but for Joe, as the lights get brighter, he plays better. Since he went 3-0 against the Chiefs in the 2022 calendar year, and if you are sick of hearing that stat or are like, yeah, we get it, there's a reason it's brought up time and time again. It's absolutely insane they beat the Chiefs 3 times in a row. And sure, they will drop an occasional game to the Browns, but every team does that at one point in time or another. Look at the Eagles with the Commanders, or the Chiefs and the Colts. I think Bengals fans are okay with losing a Monday night game to Cleveland as long as they beat the premier teams in the AFC and are ready to play when it matters most. The Bengals were under a ton of pressure entering this year because they made an unexpected trip to the Super Bowl in Burrow's second season. And could they have success this year anywhere close to last? Well, we will soon find that out, but they are peaking at the right time, and that's due in large part to Burrow. He plays calm under pressure, he doesn't get rattled, and it certainly doesn't hurt that he has the best receiving trio in the NFL. It's hard not to think that Burrow won't be a Super Bowl champion at some point in his career, and I'm not going to say multiple time or anything crazy because one Super Bowl win is hard enough. But their defense is very good too, and the Bengals are in some ways a model of how to build a franchise, and it starts with the most important position in football. Since he never panics, and that's a testament to Joe's cool demeanor under pressure. There is no moment too big for him, there is no throw too big for him, and he is the franchise quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he would be the number 1 pick in a 2020 redraft. And that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel as it would mean the world. And until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.